Oh my gosh, everybody, it's Tony from Car Stars, and I'm underneath the C4, and I'm gonna remove the starter right here, and then I'm gonna get to the flex plate bolts, and I'm gonna remove that. And why, you might ask? Because I've changed my mind for the third or fourth time as to what I'm gonna do with this transmission. So instead of going to 4L60E that originally came in the car, that bolts up to this C-beam right here perfectly, instead of doing all that, I'm gonna go with a T5. And I don't know if that's a smart move, because people say the T5's weak, but they also say that the 4L60E is extremely weak. And in order to build a 4L60E that can handle the horsepower is tons of money. So, if I don't launch it too hard, I'm hoping that I will not break this T5. So, I'm thinking for the T5 to fit in here, you see that little hump? See that little hump right there? That's probably going to have to be cut out. You can see where my automatic transmission shifting cable came from. So my shifter is back probably right where that hump is. So this C-channel, I'm going to have to fab something up to fit the T5 to that. But you know what? If the T5 breaks, at least I'll have a clutch and a bell housing that will work with whatever else I'm going to use to fit on here. So if I go like a T56 later, what have you, I should have the right components already on there. And removing a manual transmission is a lot easier, I think, than taking out a automatic. So I'm just gonna, I've got a handy dandy tool that's gonna lock this flywheel in place while I remove those bolts. But yeah, so first I just got to get that off, and I'll show you that in a second. Okay, so let's see if I can do this jankily. So anyway, here's the tool. As you can see, it's just bolts where the starter bolts, and it's got these little teeth which engage the flex plate, as you can see, and it holds it in place so that it will not turn while you are wrenching on the flex plate. So hopefully this thing is in somewhat of a position so I can get this bolted on. But yeah, so I'll just bolt it on and it'll hold it in place while I get those flex plate bolts off. Pretty simple, pretty cheap tool. It's like, I can't remember what I paid for it on Amazon or wherever I got it, eBay, same difference, probably 20-ish bucks. So yeah, it came with bolts and everything, so I'm just gonna bolt that on there. Okay, so there it is. Oh, sorry, that's not gonna make much sense if I turn it sideways. So anyways, there it is in place. Pretty easy. And yeah, now I'm going to get my 12-point sockets and get those bolts off. Now we used some Loctite on that, not the red, but some blue Loctite, so I'm hoping that I don't need to put heat on it or anything to get that off. But I suspect this is not going to be the most fun job in the world. So we'll see. We'll get a good breaker bar on it and get those off. Okay, so I got this slide hammer from Harbor Freight. Pretty good tool, actually, but the pilot bearing that's stuck in my crank end, this will not work on it. The little teeth, the little hooks, a little too fat. I tried this one. This one had the reach, but that was never going to fit in the hole. And these were able to fit in the hole, just not able to get enough of swing on it. I was swinging, and these were kind of losing their grip and started to come out through the hole. And yeah, it's just not going to work. This just can't put enough pressure on it to pound that bearing out just by sliding that little guy back and forth as hard as I could. It wasn't budging. Haven't tried to put any heat on it. I don't really want to melt the crank seal back there, so I'm gonna try to just go get a actual bearing puller and see if I can figure out some way to get at least one arm in there, some 2 arms hopefully, even if I have to modify the tool. Hopefully I can get something to work. Okay, so I'm trying to do this. I've had to go get myself another pilot bearing puller from Harbor Freight, and there's a video on YouTube of a guy using it, and he ran into the exact same problem that I'm currently running into, is that the needle bearing in there is basically, you can kind of see it, I think you can see it, it's falling apart because the little gripper arms, the little arms, cannot reach far enough back into the hole. There's not enough room back there to get the arms behind the bearing. So it's just destroying, it's getting pulled out. You just can't put enough pressure on the arms, or the arms flex and they come past the back edge of the bearing and start tearing up the needles in here. So the hope is I'm going to dig all this stuff out, and there's a lip on the front side that I'm hoping that the puller catches on and starts pulling this outer sleeve, this outer bearing race out. So yeah, that's the plan. That's exactly what happened to the other guy. So let's hope this comes out. Okay, hallelujah. It's moving. I don't know if you can see that in there with my janky light, but it's starting to back out. What happened is those 2 little arms right there, the way Harbor Freight has these pieces cast, they've got a slope where it's trying to catch the lip of the bearing. There's a slope on it, so it was constantly slipping off. So what I did is I took my grinder and I cut those flat. So I'll show you that in a second. Let me just back this thing off. I can't do it with the few hands that I have, and I'll just show you how I ground it flat. Well, heck, that was a lot more difficult than it had to be, but as you can see, the little arms are trying to grip that inside edge right there, and so there wasn't enough room behind this bearing to allow those arms to come all the way through and grip this edge. So therefore it was just sliding up the inside, tearing up the needle bearings and popping out the front. So let me show you how I cut the little arms. Okay, so as you can see, I didn't do much of a modification, but just enough. I just used my little, sorry, where's it at? I just used my little disc grinder, and there was a slight God bless. Okay, there was a slight slope on this arm right about in here, which I cut back to make this more flat, and then this right here, there was a little slope from here to there, so I cut that in. I did that on both of them, obviously, so just to make it more flat, so it actually grab that lip instead of just riding off when the pressure was applied. These would just close together and slip past the edge and out, and it just wasn't gripping. So I just barely removed some material, try to make it more flat, and then it worked. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Look at this thing. So yeah, so that's the old pilot bearing, and the new one is a sealed bearing. It's bigger than this. It's going to go on that outside diameter, and I'll show that on whenever we get to that step. Alright, thanks for watching. Leave me a comment if you want to tell me how you got your pilot bearing out, because this was a bear. I got to tell you, this was a pain in the butt. But anyway, yeah, let me know how you did it. If you have any other tips or tricks. I've seen people use wet bread and stuff it in there, and then use the hydraulic action to like push the bearing out, which, you know, you hear something like that and you're like, there's no way. But I didn't want to try that and make a mess. But yeah, let me know what you think. Anyway, if you have any other tips, let us know, and please subscribe and like. We'll catch you next time.